Hi there, Pitch Perfect vocal students. Today we're going to talk about the breath. Previously we've been doing a series of videos on vowel sounds, and so I've already gone over the importance of vowel sounds, and that should be really clear. In that video series I will have mentioned how important it is to breathe, and I know that that sounds really obvious, but in actual fact I don't know if any other teacher will have told you this, but I certainly say this to all my students. You don't begin to sing when you make a sound, you begin to sing when you take the breath. So the whole neurological response, neurological signal that promotes really good, consistent, clean singing technique begins when you breathe, and it's replenished when you breathe. So I will have touched on the idea of the silent breath, and the reasoning behind that being that we don't want to trip the esophageal flap and get that kind of sound happening in the breath, because that basically lets you know, and anybody else who's hearing you, that the esophageal flap has come down, it's been triggered, and it's now over or partially over your air pipe, which means you've probably halved your opportunity of taking a full breath. And as we know as singers, we frequently have to breathe very, very quickly, and that means that any kind of obstruction to the air pipe is just going to be a no-no. My teaching is that the quickest way to feel and get connected to and have an open throat happening for you is to take a silent breath, and that takes a little bit of practice, but when you really think about taking a silent breath, your throat walls will automatically relax. There are other methods for learning how to feel an open throat. You can close your eyes and imagine that you're in a church and that you hear something inappropriate, and you're trying not to laugh, or you're trying not to yawn. Now those are interesting little experiments to have, because the suppression of those things, or I should actually say the inception of those sorts of feelings, actually immediately puts you in touch with an open throat. When we go to laugh, when we go to yawn, when we go to giggle, all of those things require an open-throated response. So a very quick way of trying to feel what an open throat feels like would be either to try and take a silent breath, try to suppress a giggle or a laugh, or try to suppress a yawn. And so this brings me to a little bit of explanation about the yawn. Previously in the history of singing teaching, there's been a lot of controversy about the yawn technique. We don't sing on a yawn. I want to make that really clear. The yawn response is an extreme response, and we don't sing on extreme positions. We sing on very flexible positions. But the pre-yawn response, that idea that you may be about to yawn, that instantaneously triggers a flex, an open flex in the throat, and that is an extremely useful feeling to get to grips with. Another way that I teach this is to ask people to breathe in on that pre-yawn response, and then I ask them to try a number of other things, such as the silent breath, and if they're having a similar feeling, a same feeling, then to understand that that is the feeling of their throat opening, and that helps them to understand what that's supposed to feel like, and then they can put that into their breathing routine. So that is a brief explanation of breath and the pre-yawn breath. I did hear something really interesting the other day that another teacher does, and I would like to thank Robert for passing that on to one of my students, and that is to imagine that you have a mint in your mouth, one of those really pepperminty mints, and then you take a breath. When you take a breath after you've had a mint in your mouth, you can feel every part of your throat that the breath touches. So there is another useful little thing that can help you feel where the breath actually reaches in your vocal tract. If that's of use to you, I hope then that helps you fuel your singing phrases a lot more efficiently. There is a lot more to do with breath. There's a lot more to do in terms of the body's receipt of the breath, but we start with an open throat, and then we assess the body's responses from there. So let's just say that you've taken a lovely open breath. What else can you expect to feel? Well, you can expect that the breath is going to drop to the bottom of the lungs, and that the pressure on the bottom of the lungs is going to push your diaphragm down more fully than it would normally be pushed down. And that's quite a significant feeling as well, because instead of breathing happening up here, it's going to be happening much further down. It's going to be happening really around your waistband and lower. The other thing that happens when lungs fill up with air with a really deep breath is that they descend and they spread. And they are going to spread against the floating rib. That's where I tend to tell people to have a wee bit of a feel. So I am going to be putting up a video of somebody breathing absolutely perfectly so that you can really see what's happening. I think it would be fair to say that in terms of learning the sensation of a deep singing breath, there are people that feel it below the waistband, just underneath their belly button. There are people that feel it in that lower section of their spine, underneath where the floating rib, the final rib is. There are some people who actually put their hands on their waists and they feel that their waistbands expand. I think that if you're aiming to start learning how to sing properly to fuel a singing phrase, you need to be thinking about the amount of space, that section between your floating rib and your waistband. And if you're watching in a mirror, and you should be practicing in a mirror, it's an incredibly useful tool, then when you breathe in, you want to see an expansion through that section, and as you sing out, you'll see a contraction. What you don't want to see is a lot of heaving of shoulders and a lot of heaving of chest. And as we come to the conclusion of this video explaining a little bit about the breath, there is a very lovely technique that I have for checking whether or not your breath is low enough. And that is simply to pop a hand, just like I have, so all the fingers are together, on your mid-chest, so underneath your clavicle, which is the little bony protrusion through there, and a little bit turned this way, not that way, but turned across, and you can rest your arm down. And when you take your beautifully silent, deep singing breath, you should feel almost no displacement from your thumb to these four fingers. You may feel some movement underneath this section of the palm of your hand and your little finger. I'm going to see if you can see me take a singing breath and understand what I mean. So I just took 2 really deep breaths. They're absolutely appropriate for singing. And I hope what you noticed was that's almost 0 chest displacement and certainly no shoulder displacement or any kind of a heaving. So if you watch a singer and they're doing all of this kind of nonsense, you know that they have absolutely no idea what they're doing in terms of a singing breath. All right, if you've got any questions, you can shoot them to me at meera@meerabelle.com, B-E-L-L-E, and I'll see you for the next section of videos, which is going to be a series explaining the consonants. All right, see you on the other side. Bye.